We're
Hey,
live.
when, when I get home, I'll just stay in the car. I don't need to get out, do I? I mean,
However
does it
you want
matter?
to do it. However you want to do it, Aaron.
All right,
Anything
yeah,
you want.
we'll see how it is.
Well, Frank, I'll
So
let you
what?
do the introduction here. You can welcome our guest to the podcast today.
Yeah, hi. I'm Frank Forza. I'm here with my buddy Noah Green, and Aaron Simpson is our guest today. And I'm happy to have Aaron on because Aaron and I go back. I don't know how well you remember me, Aaron. We go back like 11, 12 years or so,
Yep.
to the old, UFC, WEC days. And a lot of people, if Aaron's on Arizona, you're in Scottsdale, right? Right, Aaron?
Tempe, Arizona.
Okay, so down there in Arizona online, you might not be, but I think you're a guy. As I was telling Noah, we're gonna have some heavy hitters on the show, but I consider you a heavy hitter because I know you're a very high functioning guy, high performance guy. I thought this like 12 or 13 years ago when I was interviewing you when I worked for UFC. I thought, I mean, I remember writing the story about you, and it was like you were really one of those guys that had like a Midas touch. It's like everything Aaron Simpson does, he does really well. Everything you set your mind to, um, and so that's why I wanted to have you on because we focus a lot here, not just on the martial arts, but the martial arts for life and the mind jitsu of getting, the mental side of things, the attitude side of things. You're a certified high performer. Let me tell people a little bit about you, Aaron, for people that who maybe are like, should I watch this? Who is this guy, Aaron Simpson? Never heard of him. Should I continue watching? If I remember correctly, correct me when I'm done. Straight A student in high school, right? I think you were a straight A student.
Yeah,
Academic
yeah,
All American in Arizona State. So you're academic All American, I believe.
yep, yep.
142 wins, one loss in high school wrestling, 4 state titles. I'm very jealous when I see that, when I say that. I am genuinely jealous. I finished third in the state of Maryland in wrestling. I won 34 matches my senior year. I'm jealous of a guy that has 142 and 4 state titles. I think you were like all state in track and field or something like that, if I remember correctly. Correct me. Then you're a UFC fighter who had a pretty good career, fought a little bit later in your career. You're a 2-time All-American at Arizona State University. I don't know, but my guess is that you're killing it in that Aaron is killing it in real estate there in Arizona. We're going to find out. We just lost him, which is fine. We'll get him back. But Noah, this is why I wanted to have he's here. Aaron's back. This is why I wanted to have Aaron on because there are a lot of people who just look and say, oh, if you're a UFC champion, if you're number one in the world, then I want to hear what you have to say. But if you're whatever else, I can't learn anything. No, this dude is a brain worth picking. I want to have him on. I want him to talk us through his habits, his mindset, his motivation, his attitude, how he zeroed in on, you know, his identity. Like this guy had a very firm identity. He doesn't sit there. He has a strong sense of purpose, a strong sense of meaning. And I just was very impressed by him 12 years ago. Welcome back, Aaron. So Aaron,
Yeah.
I gave you the hero introduction. You deserve it.
Uh,
And now what I want to find out, because part of this is to pick your brain and find out how that high performer, that super high performer thinks and your habits and your sense of purpose and your why. We want to go into that. But I haven't really had much correspondence with you in recent years. So first and foremost, this is kind of like, where are they now? What in the hell are you up to? What are you doing these days? What are you focused on?
yeah. Well, thanks for having me on first, Frank. Yeah, it has been many years, and I see your stuff on Facebook and watched your TED Talk the other day, which was pretty cool. I am still living in Tempe, Arizona. I have twin 12-year-olds now, boy and girl. Um, had them back in 2008. It's amazing how fast it's gone by. Really, like I think about like my MMA days, and like it's just a blink and it was over. And it was hard for me to not compete anymore in that. Like that was my last time of really competing was fighting in the UFC, and it was like, man, what do I do next? And then I got into we had our gym, and I was with Ryan Bader and CB Dalloway, and they were still training, I was still coaching them, and then it's just hard. The MMA world, running a gym and trying to make money at it and trying to provide for your family and traveling and all that, missing time with your kids. And so I ended up in 2016 getting my real estate license and getting out of that. A lot of it was because of, I got a real estate license because if you know the name Randall Alleman, Randall's out of Vegas there.
I know
coached him.
Randall.
I coached Randall at ASU. And then we always stayed connected through the MMA. He was kind of one of our managers for fighting, like one of our agents / managers. And he was like, man, you should get your license, your real estate license. So I went ahead and got it. And I've been in the residential real estate market for 5 years now, which has just flown by as well.
Now let me guess. In true Aaron Simpson style, you hit the ground running and you're doing very well.
I did, and I am, and I attribute that to me kind of getting lucky. Well, not lucky. I guess things just happen along the way if you continue to move in a positive direction. But I've lived in Tempe, Arizona since 1993. I've known a lot of people because of owning a gym and coaching at Arizona State University, and just kind of what I did. I guess fighting in the UFC and in the wrestling world. So I was able to, it's all about kind of building your core sphere of influence, they want to say, and helping people buy and sell homes. And so I was able to do that. And I was the type that, like, I was kind of embarrassed to say I was a realtor at the time. It's like you make this huge shift in the way your life is lived. Now people see you now like, oh, you're a realtor. Like it might as well have been like a used car salesman or something in my eyes. And so it took me a little time to really like put it out there that that's what I did. Yeah, I'm no longer, in the fight world or that. And I still, like, from time to time, like, I'd go up and help Ben Henderson and stuff, and those guys at the lab, and I'd help guys out. But I really, like, took a major step back from being around that. That was my everyday life. And but it was really a nice change for me, like not having to worry about a fighter winning or losing or paying you if you won or lost. Was a nice change. Like if I sell a home, I'm definitely guaranteed that money once the home closes. So that's a nice change in the way things are going. And as well, I got back into coaching wrestling. I've been coaching wrestling at Arcadia High School here in Scottsdale, Arizona. A buddy of mine, his son wrestles for the team, and he kind of coerced me into coaching. So this is my third year of coaching high school wrestling again, which has been nice, man. It's like I've had to rethink coaching again. Like you have to be really patient because I'm getting kids that have never seen a wrestling mat before, and I'm pretty good with patience and that, and really teaching things. Like I enjoy, teaching a newbie how to, walk in a wrestling stance. So that part of it's kind of exciting. We had a duel last night down in Casa Grande, Arizona, and I had kids. It was their first time ever putting a singlet on, having to walk out of the mat and compete. And it was, you get there's some cool rewards you get out of that just seeing like that first victory, or talking them through their first defeat and how upset they can be because they didn't even know what to expect, and now they're on their back getting pinned in front of a bunch of people. So
I imagine, Aaron, that part of the beauty of being a 4-time state champion, of being a 2-time All-American wrestler, of being a UFC fighter, of being a all-state track and field, all these things. I imagine that when you talk, everybody listens. It's like, this guy probably knows. You probably get, some coaches might even be good, but when they don't have the credentials, sometimes the athletes be one ear out the other. I imagine that when you talk, it's like, people just stop and like, what's the old saying? When E.F. Hutton talks, people listen. I don't know if you remember that. You remember that? Do you remember that slogan, Noah? when E.F. Hutton, he just left. But anyway, I was
Oh, yeah.
thinking that I've coached recreation wrestlers. I've coached high school athletes. I've coached, jiu-jitsu athletes. I've coached, 60-year-olds. And there, Aaron's back with us. The wonders of technology here.
Yeah, well, it's pretty cool that we can just jump in together like this.
Yeah, Aaron. Hey, welcome back. So now I think you're settled now. But what I was saying, Aaron, is I imagine that all of that history of achievement comes in handy when you're coaching an athlete and getting them to buy in to what you're saying.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily start out like meeting these kids and going, this is my resume and this is what I've done in my past. And I think some of the kids may say like, or they'll show them, a video of me or whatever competing before, but it's never that. But I it's learned quickly, I guess, once we get to work and they start seeing that what I'm saying is real. And then I've got Christian Pagdalao, who's an All-American at Arizona State University, who's a freaking stud in his own right. And so we've got two guys that are highly knowledgeable, and it gets known really fast that, it's not time to mess around.
Yeah, I wish I'd had an All-American, D1 All-American wrestler, two-time All-American, teaching me high school wrestling. Like that would have been a big plus.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
I look at these kids these days, especially here in the Phoenix area. Like we've got some great wrestling clubs, and the amount of knowledge that is in the valley here. And kids are getting so much better. Like they're coming out, at junior high, and they're like high level wrestlers because they're getting coached correctly. They're getting trained correctly. They're finding out about nutrition and everything. And we got a kid, a buddy of mine, Eric Larkin, who started a high school down here for wrestling. It's a private high school, and they just won this national Tulsa Nationals out in Oklahoma this past weekend. The 15U, they had like 8 kids placed in the top 5 in the nationals.
That's amazing. What did you learn on a wrestling mat, fighting in the octagon? You're a purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu as well. Maybe you're more than that. Were you purple belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, Aaron?
Yeah. And I haven't necessarily like gotten any further in Jiu-Jitsu. It's always tough.
Right.
It's always tough to me to put the robe on and everything and go in there. Like I'd rather be no gi. But
what have you learned on a wrestling mat, on a Jiu-Jitsu mat, cage fighting, that you can actually carry over to being a realtor, that you can carry over to real life? What skills do you learn that translate very well?
Well, I talk about this a lot, and I think the biggest thing that we learn is solving problems. And I feel like I'm good at that. Like if I don't just brashly jump into something and throw an answer out there. Oh, we're doing this. Like there comes a time where you have to have a sense of urgency on things, but I've been able to do it, I guess, solve problems with a sense of urgency, if that makes any sense. I've gotten good at solving problems and something pops up and I can kind of go through and see the outcome several different ways and then hopefully choose the right way to solve that problem. And I feel like that's what wrestlers are good at. That's what fighters are good at, because you're in a cage and you don't know what's going to be thrown at you. You can be 100% healthy and you have a guy that comes out there and pulls guard, or you have a guy that comes out here and does a certain thing or lands one good shot, or you break your hand in a fight. And I talk about fighting because I'm amazed with fighters what they have to overcome to still get a victory. Wrestling, you break your hand in a match. A lot of times they stop the match. You cut, if you get a good cut, a split, like you're probably stopping the match. In a fight, like you get a good split, you're continuing to fight. You got to figure that out. Get the blood out of your eyes and continue to fight. Ryan Bader broke his hand down in Australia in the first round against the guy and had to finish the fight. Went 3 rounds and couldn't finish the guy because he had no hand. He couldn't hold him. He couldn't punch it. But he still got the victory. And that's just, that's problem solving at its most.
Where do you get that adrenaline? How do you replace, you've been an athlete most of your life, a high level athlete, a professional athlete, where do you find that adrenaline rush these days, or do you just not crave it anymore? How do you replace the high of Burt Watson backstage? It's time, we're rolling. How do you, that battle cry that he has that says, hey, it's on now. You're 5 minutes away from Buffer announcing your name, and it's on, and it's real, and it's the unknown. As much as you prepared, you're walking into the greatest unknown in all of sports. And how do you replace that the thrill of athletic competition? How do you replace it? What are you doing these days? How are you adapting to that?
You don't replace that. First off, the answer to that is there's no way you can ever, unless you can get back in that locker room and have Bert say, it's time to roll. And there's just no replacing it. Like, I wish I could get back to that feeling. So I've yet to be able to do that. My body is pretty beat up. Like, I probably point to 10 things that like, I've got a neck that is constantly numb over here that I'm going to need neck surgery. My elbows are jacked. They don't straighten. My knees are bad. My low back's bad. Like, I've got injuries, shoulders are bad. So, but I'm able to still wrestle and kind of give back that way. Like I said, I'll still help fighters. I'll still help people train if they need me. But I don't necessarily crave that anymore. At 46 years old, I feel like I've done as much as I can in that regard. Now that I have kids, so I want to see them. I want to be here for them and be able to let them reach for the stars and help them out whenever they want. And I can talk about my experiences and what I've learned and what I could change if I could or whatever. But yeah.
So Aaron, that pivot, that shift in identity where you go from the competitive pro athlete to the coach, to the realtor. You've always been the father. You've always been the husband. We're going to talk about that. But that psychological shift, what is that conversation like, though, that happens when you have to say, I think I've gone as far as I can go with this because my body, what is that? How do you get to that sense of peace? Like, what's the inner monologue that gets you to the place where you are now, where it's like, hey, I'm going to be selfless. It's all about coaching. It's all about my family. It's all about this. What shift? Because that's not just an inner monologue shift, but that's also an identity shift, because there is some identity shift that happens there. Oh, yeah. Take us through, I guess, how that process worked, and was there any struggle with it? Was there ever tension with it? How did you come to that shift and make peace with it?
Well, I've had practice, and it's not easy. My wife's a mental health therapist, so she talks about all the time, and we've talked about what I've gone through and different things. It started, I think, in college, and as an athlete, as a collegiate athlete, the day that you compete in your last event, whether it's the NCAAs or whatever, the next day comes and then you're no longer part of the team. And I remember having that thought. Like, I walked into the team meeting at Arizona State University and I was no longer on the team. I was a senior badass one day, and the very next day I was, what are you doing here? Like, I went to the team meeting and I felt like an outcast. And that was a shift. Like, holy shit, what do I do with myself now? And then luckily I got put on staff, and then I was a coach. Like, shortly after I was back on the team, and then I was able to carry that on for 10 years. And then I had another shift where I was let go at Arizona State University and going, what do I do with my life now? Ryan Bader and CB and Kane are training over at this gym. Oh God, I'll go do that a little bit and try to figure it out. I've got to figure some things out though. And then I start training, and then next like 2 months later, I'm fighting down in the Cayman Islands, and still going like, what am I doing with my life? I just finished my master's degree. So I had a master's degree in higher education. I was going to stay in collegiate athletics, and now I'm out. Now I'm fighting some guy for $1,000 in the Cayman Islands. And then that took off a little bit. Next, I'm fighting in the UFC, and so that's my identity. And then that's over. Like the UFC's over, and now what's my identity? And it's like, God, what do I do? Well, you've got a gym, so you're going to go help fighters now, but you're no longer like that. Was meant I struggled with that. I've always been a high level athlete where I was competing and training and had something to do at 3:30. Now I'm coaching and I can do that. And then that got old and tiresome, and I needed to get away from that, and I got into real estate, and that was a cultural shift and an identity shift, and like I'm no longer hanging out with fighters. I'm helping these two people find a house or sell a house, and man, but I've had practice and I've had to do it over and over again, and I've talked to my wife about it and had friends there at times to talk to, but it hasn't been easy. I mean, anybody who says something like that is easy is I think they're lying, because it's tough, and you see guys like Michael Phelps dealing with what he's dealing. You got to think, like, that guy did everything in the Olympics, and there comes a day where Michael Phelps isn't needed. He's not training for a gold medal, and he talks about it. We suffered from depression and all the therapy he's needed, and I think he's still suffering, and I think a lot of athletes go through that. Jay Glazer, a buddy of mine out there in LA, and you see him on Fox Sports, NFL, and Jay's talks about mental health and mental health therapy. And what he has done, I think, is unbelievable, but he's merged and he's got MVP. Do you know about what Jay's group is, merging vets and players? Yeah. So he's taken former athletes, professional athletes, football players, and merging them together in these workouts with veterans that are coming, that are trying to go like, holy shit, I don't have this team anymore. I'm not overseas. Or doing something for my country. They're lost, and the suicide rates through the roof, and he's saving lives because of that MVP program. And like, I can't say enough about how amazing that is what Jay's done by bringing athletes and veterans together to kind of draw from each other that are dealing with that. So I was never at that point, I've never suicidal during that, but I was down, and there are times I was pretty down. And I can relate to a little bit to that feeling, I guess.
Yeah. Fun fact here. Noah Green, my right-hand man, is a former Marine too. And actually a pretty good shot from what I hear. He's got a pretty good shot. Don't let the
marksman there.
The PhD look fool you. This guy could, this guy's a way better shot than I am, at least.
Yeah.
So,
well, thank you first, Noah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thank you.
I want to ask you about your why, because Noah and I were talking about this in the lead up to this interview. That you're one of those guys, like you have a lot of people from Brazil, and I have a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I've trained with a lot of Brazilians. I've met a lot of the Brazilians through the UFC. And a lot of people in Brazil, for example, there's no plan B for a lot of those fighters. Fighting is their way out, or jiu-jitsu is their way out. And they don't have all the options that we've had here in the United States. You take a guy like you, it's like a straight A student, an All-American, both on the wrestling mat and academically. You could have done anything you wanted. You could have went and worked for a major big business company, and instead you're fighting in a cage. What was driving you to take the riskier route instead of hey, I was an All-American, two-time All-American wrestler. I've had the Midas touch. Let's go make a lot of money. I got a beautiful wife. I got great kids. What made you take, and again, and this is the thing, Aaron, I want to put this in perspective, because for you to fight in the cage 10, 12, 13 years ago was riskier than now, because it wasn't like, it was wilder. It was more maligned. It was less understood. It wasn't mainstream. It wasn't for the money. It was a stupider decision on paper 13, 14 years ago. At least now somebody can justify it. It's on ESPN. There's a dangling carrot of a lot of money. It's popular. Chicks can dig it, whatever. There's not a lot of that. When Aaron Simpson's fighting in a cage, you could have taken the safer route, went for the money, went for a major company. What was the why that was driving you to be like, no, I want to fight in a cage against the best?
I'm not very smart, I guess. I you know, I always wanted to be a professional athlete, but I think deep down inside, like I knew I was a fighter, and I felt like I needed to like I always say like I always thought there was a door open for me. I always at least like stuck my head through and looked through it and saw what it was all about, you know. And I feel like if I can pass that on to people, that's it. Like don't just be like, oh no, I'm not gonna do that, or no, I'm not gonna do that. Like I want to check it out and see if it was something that interests me. And I just doors open and I had opportunities, and like 5 fights in, I'm fighting in the UFC, which I don't think I told anybody that that's what I was doing until I actually was in the UFC. It was kind of embarrassing up to that point. So I could say I was a professional athlete, but I don't know, something in me just still wanted to train at a high level. And I knew I was really good at like controlling another human being with my skill set, whatever it need be. I'm like, man, I'm really good at this, and I want to see it through. I'm not a violent person. Like I don't condone violence. Like I'm not a hunter. I don't kill animals. I'm not someone like that. But there's like still like that animal instinct in me that I've had since I was young. That I needed to see that all the way through, and get that out of me and see how far I go. Because God, I really, in a weird way, enjoyed it. Like I enjoyed getting, punched and punching someone and training at that high level and being around a group of guys that had the same interests, and trying to attain a goal physically, mentally and physically that nobody else in the world could do. Like I was drawn to that more than really anything, and that's why I chose that route. That was
what is it? What is it about someone like you? I mean, we're in a sport, the combat sport, where a lot of people would want to quit. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that if they were just to go to a normal wrestling practice, they would want to quit, like ring the bell like 10, 15, 20 minutes in. Most people couldn't make it through a wrestling practice, let alone, a high level tournament or fight in a cage. What is your conversation with the word quit? Because there's got to be moments where you're exhausted, the lactic acid's there, you're labored breathing in an intense MMA practice or in an actual fight. What is it that makes you tell the quit to just shut up, or that makes you push through when you're there in a gut check moment and you're digging deep and you're in pain and you're tired and you're fatigued? What's carrying you through that?
I loved it. I love that feeling. I love that feeling of being exhausted, and knowing that like I'm breaking the person I'm maybe going against or whatever. I don't know. There's something about that physical exhaustion and mental fatigue and like just going balls to the wall that I was drawn to. Like I don't know anywhere else. I'm dealing with these high school kids now, and I'm training them hard, and I get kind of physical with them, and I hand fight with them, and their eyes get big, and I'm not a jerk by any means, but like I want these kind of nerdy kids to go like it's okay to be able to lay hands on somebody if you have to, to defend yourself, or it's like I'm agreeing to this, you're agreeing to this. It's okay. Like I'm your coach. Club me back, where I want you to do a club hard tie, blast that double leg, and run me to my back. And I've got some things out of these kids that didn't know how to tie their shoes when they came into the wrestling room. That now, like when they leave, they're like, God damn, that crazy bastard of a coach that I wrestled for 3 years, I'd never known before. They're going to have that for the rest of their lives. They're going to do, and I tell them like every day in practice, I'm like, you guys are walking around this campus with people that have never had to struggle. There are people on this campus, because I come from the school's in an affluent area, and they've never had to struggle. They've never had to feel that pain that you guys are feeling right now. And I want them to draw from that. I want them to later on in life go like, holy shit, like coach, this is what coach was talking about. Like times are tough right now. And now it's time for me to push through because I know that I can do this, which there are other people never had to struggle. They've always had things handed to them, and, they get tired and they can take a break, or they're thirsty and there's water in the fridge, or they're hungry and there's food. Wrestling is that last thing kids that are willing to step into a wrestling room, at least with me, to learn that, like our grandparents always talk about, or, those generations of the hard work they had to struggle through. They had to go out and milk cows all day and buck hay on the farm and do all kinds of work before they had to walk 2 miles to school. Things are easy these days for kids. And so I feel like it's my job for anyone that steps, through that door into the wrestling room, that I'm going to push them and teach them ways that like our grandparents would be proud of them for, our great grandparents would be proud of them, because they don't get that unless they join the military, unless they do something. And then hopefully they're prepared if they're wrestlers, if they go into the military or something, because this life isn't easy. And some kids have it easy, and when it gets hard, they don't know what to do, and they quit. They turn to drugs. They turn to whatever else. So I try to really bring that. And I guess I'm getting a little long-winded, but it's big for me, and that was my outlet, I guess. And like I both my parents together, I didn't struggle growing up. Both my parents were teachers, but I just something about that sport and being able to physically push myself and beat somebody else in something physically. God, I don't know. I can't describe it unless you understand, because you go through it yourself.
Tell Noah and I about since we're talking this, you've had the chance. Arizona State's had Bobby Douglas, Kendall Cross, I believe, has run a good program there, good wrestling programs there in Arizona. You mentioned Eric Larkin. You've had some, phenomenal wrestlers, national champions. Bobby Douglas, former coach, is legend. So you've been around a lot of great minds. Tell us maybe 4 or 5 pillars of your coaching philosophy. If you're coaching a kid and they're only going to remember 4 or 5 things, you alluded to one of them, which is that mental toughness of helping them to dig deep and push through, and to hopefully have that confidence carrying over later in life off the mat, something they go through and they draw that same power, they draw that same fighting spirit. What are 4 or 5, though, of the pillars of your coaching philosophy? If you can only teach them 4 or 5 things, you're going to drill in them. You're my coach for 3 or 4 years. What are you going to drill into me?
Well, first of all, Kendall Cross wrestled Oklahoma State. Really it is too. And I love great dude, but Sun Devils don't claim.
I know it's Zach. What's his name? It's with a Z.
Zeke Jones.
I'm so sorry. I'm confusing Zeke Jones just to show my wrestling IQ. I am confusing Zeke Jones, who probably was a competitor of Kendall Cross. They probably were rivals. Yeah. And I'm confusing the two. I'm confusing Zeke Jones.
Zeke is the head coach. Zeke's the head coach here now, actually.
Yes.
It is here.
No, I'm confusing Zeke.
But, I go back. My dad was the one who taught me these pillars that I'll talk about. And he was my wrestling coach, and really probably a major reason why, like, I'm the fighter that I am, and that it was instilled in me. But I think what I teach my kids is to kind of keep a poker face, to not show that you're tired. That's a big one. I even spoke about today at practice. Although these kids have to wrestle in masks, so it's kind of impossible to see how tired someone is.
Everybody's got a poker face now.
Oh yeah, everyone has poker. You don't even know how tired someone is. But not letting someone know that you're tired, and faking yourself, talking yourself into it sometimes. Like I'm good. I'm fresh. I could be dog tired, but if I look over and see that guy with his hands on knees and his head down and he's got a whiny look on his face, I should draw from that. And so, that's a big one. A sense of urgency, I think, and I spoke about that earlier, but being able to get shit done when it's time. 5 seconds left. There's time on the clock. There's time to score. You're down by a point. You got 10 seconds. How are you going to score to take this guy down to win? You're down 14-0. How you got to pin the guy. What are you going to do? And I've seen it happen. I had pinned a kid 2 years ago to qualify for the state tournament. He was down, 12-1, and he pulled a move out that we worked on all year, and he pinned the guy. So like never giving just having that sense of urgency and knowing that they can always pull through with something. Wrestling wise, like hustling back to the center. You go out of bounds, you run back to the center. Not like slowly taking your time. That was always big to me, and that comes back to a sense of urgency, hustling. Um, being honest with yourself, being like true to yourself, not lying, not cheating, not cutting corners. That's another big thing. If we've got 100 push-ups and I say, hey, everyone do 100 push-ups, you better do 100 push-ups. Don't let go, because coach can't count all your push-ups. Don't do 70 or 50. Do 120. And that comes down to the discipline of it too. Like I talk to my kids about discipline. My dad always explained, if you play poker and you're dealt 5 cards, and you're doing playing 5-card stud, and you're in those 5 cards, it's showing up to practice, eating healthy, getting extra lifts in, running in the morning, and getting good grades. That's your 5 cards. Well, what if in the meantime, you decide not to get good sleep, and you lose a card, now you got 4 cards, or you're drinking alcohol or doing drugs, now you got 3 cards. Well, the guy that's got 5 cards is going to beat the guy that's got 3 cards. And let's say that guy's got a 5th card, he gets another card, and that card is he's waking up in the morning and he's getting a run, a lift, and he's going to get an extra drill in with somebody, or practicing. Now he's got 6 cards, so you're 3 cards. He's going to win every time. So, I tried. My dad told me that story, and it really made sense to me, that discipline and being able to kind of prioritize things that are going to help you reach your next goal. So that, those, I kind of jumped around a lot there, but I think those things really help define someone's success, especially in wrestling, but God, just in life, being able to be disciplined and have a sense of urgency, and having a poker face at times, and having a plan. Those will get you a lot.
Yeah, that's great stuff, Aaron. I'm glad I asked that question. Noah, I want to bounce it to you for a question or two, because I know that you're sitting here. I know your wheels are turning. What stands out to you so far in the conversation, Noah, and what do you want to, what would you, we got a chance to pick Aaron's brain. What stands out to you, and what questions do you have?
That your questions are really good at going into the meat of the matter and extracting a lot of the core things. So you make my job here a little hard to do that.
Hope something good.
Oh yeah. Well, I think that when people talk about mental toughness, that can mean a lot of things, and I view that as mental toughness as being high performance under high adversity. And but you may have a different take on it. How do you take someone, off the couch, and you take them to where you build them up to that performance level of where they build up mental toughness?
Well, I think I deal with that with like these kids that come in here that they're gangly, like goofy looking kids that come into a wrestling room and basically off the couch. And I have to instill something in them. And I think that, like, the mental toughness, there's probably degrees of it. You have someone like Jordan Burroughs, who's an Olympic champ and one of the greatest wrestlers we've ever had in the United States. His level of mental toughness is far and above everybody else in the world. Stephen Neal one time told me, like, Stephen Neal was a world champ for us and played in the Super Bowl, 3 Super Bowl championships for the Patriots. And he was like, mental toughness to him was nothing, because he was this big specimen of a man, and he didn't doubt anything. He never doubted himself, and he just went for it. Whereas, other kids, like, their insecurities are out there. They don't look like how they want to look. They're overweight. They, who knows what it was instilled in them as a kid growing up, bullying or whatever. So there's some play there with dealing with someone like that. So I think it's like baby steps for them. Okay. And I'm really positive when I coach these kids. So, if they do something that resembles a wrestling stance, I tell them, good job. I'm like, I'm not, and I've had coaches in the past that were super negative, and I never understood that. They just downbeat, like, just someone for doing something wrong. And whereas I'm like, well, he's kind of doing it right, so I can help him. Like, at least at the start, he's trying. So I think there's like little baby steps to mental toughness, on getting them off. You can't just turn a someone just stepping off the couch into a marathon or into a world champ or an Ironman or whatever. They've got to take those baby steps. So it's those little disciplines that maybe you can instill along the way with like encouragement along the way and positivity, because we all like to be told we're good. We all like to be told we're doing something good. There is maybe a select few people that can take the negative and switch it in their mind and get better from negative stuff. I could I could have a coach that could be negative, and I'm like, screw him. I can do it, and I could turn it into something positive for myself. But I don't know that a lot of people can do that. You can be negative with some people. It just beats them down. They don't come back from that. So I'm a real positive type coach, and I believe that that's more advantageous than the negative.
That's Frank and I in earlier podcasts, we've been doing this over a year now, and he's an aficionado of the negative approach. And
wait. Yeah,
let me finish. Let me finish with the conditions of, Frank's approach is a bit more. It's more as cutting remarks, but that's for someone who's already got the momentum going. And yes. Frank, I know you will you will adjust what I just said to more of how you think. But Aaron, I completely agree with you. To go from zero or going in reverse, even to a grown man, to get him off the couch after Netflix and COVID. You gotta, okay, let's set a goal. And like for me, I'll be honest, I have not been training at Henzo's for a while now. And so what have I worked on? My cooking skills. There you go. So yeah. I've set a small goal that I don't even know if I can get that right now, just because of work circumstances, of at least doing my first sprint triathlon at the slowest pace I can. But that's just to rebuild my cardio. But I'm saying this because, I've got to encourage myself. Yes, you can do this. You can. Yeah. Yeah. So, but Frank, go ahead and correct me on, or,
no, I
take it from here. Take it from here.
People will have to listen, but I would say, so one thing I want to, in the interest of time, because Aaron, there's a lot of fertile ground to talk about. You got so much stuff. We got the plant-based, vegan. We got, I want to talk a little bit about ego. But we have to talk about you and your wife. You've got the twins. I think you've adopted a third child, but your mother-in-law with the artificial whatever insemination or however that is, but she talk about that. That's an amazing story where you've got twins and your mother-in-law was stepped up and was like, I will, however, artificial insemination, I will carry the kids and I will, they'll be born and then they're, you guys will all raise them together and tell us about that. 'Cause that's a very unique story.
Before I go on to that, first of all, I'm really sarcastic, and so I understand the cutting part too. And there's certain people that you can go like, what the fuck are you doing? Get your ass off the couch and get in the gym, workout. And there are other people that you got to kind of hold their hand. And I'm good both ways, but I'm also like, I use, I'll guilt people. So I'll guilt my athletes. So I'm like, and Randall Allman, I'll tell you, like, and some of these guys, when I was especially at ASU, like these guys could take it because they were there for a reason. They were there to win a national title. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, you don't have to do 10 more sprints today. Just go home. Just because 10 more sprints aren't going to help you, or whatever it is. And I'm pretty good at the cutting part of it too. So I've got to differentiate who can take it and who can't. And hopefully, I don't overcross that, because sometimes I'll break a kid and I'll be sarcastic and next thing he thinks I'm a complete a-hole. But all right, on to the in vitro fertilization. I think you were talking about.
Yeah.
IVF. Yeah, we struggled to have kids. My wife did for 4 years, and it was a rough time. It's not even fun to talk about anymore, because it's like we're past it and we have 12-year-olds now, but it's pretty amazing. My mother-in-law did step up and say she would carry our kids if we wanted her to, and we initially said no, we're not going to have you do. You're 52 years old, that's insane. But she, behind our back, she checked herself out. She had been running, she was a marathoner and was in phenomenal shape, and so we implanted our two embryos into her, and they both took, and 9 months later we had a boy and girl twins, and now they're 12 years old, which is all crazy. My mother-in-law wrote a book about it, which was strange for us at the time, but it's kind of cool little historical thing that we have in our lives. You know, stories told that way.
Did you get national media out of that? I mean, I'm sure the national media were they all over that?
Yeah, it was in the Enquirer. My wife and mother-in-law were on the Joy Behar show back then. It was a unique time, and I was just getting into fight. I think I was maybe it had several fights. I don't think I was in the UFC at the time. It was all strange. Like my wife and I were on American Gladiators. That show came out in like 2008. Remember the original American Gladiators? So like that came out. We were on that, and not because the twins, just because we signed up for it and they got us on. But yeah, that's it, you know. And now I have, and kind of going back to the discipline thing. So my son and I, for New Year's, I just came up and go, hey, what if we did 30 push-ups a day, every day for 365 days? You want to do that? And he's like, yeah. And my son's a little stud athlete. Like he's a high-level dancer. He's a national champ tap dancer. Is like age 10. And so he competes and dance all the time, but he also plays baseball. He says he's going to wrestle next year. He's getting to play tackle football this year. He's just a little stud athlete, but I put it out there. I'm like, you want to do 30 push-ups a day? I think is 30. Everyone can do 30 push-ups. I mean, throughout the day, if you do 5, you know, every hour, you're going to get 30 in a day. So he's like, yeah. So he agreed to it. So we're holding each other accountable. We have our calendar all set out. We have little marks that we put on it. And so far we've got, you know, 30 push-ups a day. And if we do more, we have a little place where we can add those to that day. And the plan is to get it for the year. So it's a small goal that I said, you know, in a year, we're going to have over 11,000 push-ups because we're doing more than 30 a day sometimes, but we at least have to hit 30. So it's a cool goal to have. It's cool for he and I to do together. And we're keeping track and we're holding each other accountable on it.
Now, the question of nature versus nurture, I've loved that question and wrestled with that question over the years. You have twins, so you have, and of course, there's been a lot of scientific study of twins in terms of how much is nature, how much is nurture. If you raise the twins apart, you have a front row seat. You can only speak to your experience. How much is nature and how much is nurture in the development of humans? How does that? What's your little front row seat to that?
Well, everything I say is wrong because my wife is a therapist and she knows how to raise kids better than I do. So I'm quick to yell at them and want to like, God damn it, quit being disrespectful. And like the way I was raised, you know, I was yelled at and they're different. Like my kids are different. My son is really sensitive and he takes stuff to heart. He's a thinker. And so like I've got to really teach myself to approach him differently than I do my daughter. My daughter's a little stud too. Like she plays on a flag football team. She has a girls flag football team. She's was a pitcher on a boys baseball team. She plays soccer. Like she's a little stud athlete and she handles things differently than she does. Like she can shrug stuff off like, yeah, all right, Dad, I'll go. And whereas like if I yell at my son, so I think it's a little bit of both. There's some nurture and then there's some, you know, we gotta get after them a little bit too. You know, we're both pretty good disciplinarians, but we both want, you know, them to work hard and do their best at things and not be lazy. And so a lot of it is just what how they see us react to things and how they see us live our lives. And hopefully we're good role models too, I guess.
Let's talk about ego because you've been very successful at a lot of things. How do you manage to keep that ego in check and humility? How do you manage to balance that? What's been the key for you?
I've always learned about being humble, I guess, from my dad as a young kid. And I've always I always wanted the spotlight, but I never wanted to like talk about myself in the spotlight. I always wanted other people talking about me. I wanted to put the performance out there and then have other people talk about me. That was my ego. I still at times like, you always want that. I'll be walking it's been a little while, but my son and I were in Chicago and like walking down the street and this guy goes, "Hey, Aaron Simpson." It was years after I'd been fighting. And I'm like, yeah, I'm just, real, thank you for recognizing me. And my son's looking like, "Hey, Dad, how does this guy know you? How does he know you, Dad?" And I'm like, I didn't want to say, but I ended up telling him. But it was kind of a neat thing, like someone knew me, and then my son got to see that someone knew me. But like I think there's a fine line, and I was never good at like what Conor McGregor does. And I think maybe had I done more of that boastful look at me, maybe I would have seen the UFC more. Maybe I would have, been more of an exciting fighter. Mine was like the way I raised was you work hard, you go out there, you fight hard, you get your hand raised, you run out, and then you get ready for the next one. Not like you walk out, you enjoy it all, you look at me, point at yourself, take pictures of yourself, send out, and then have performance and talk shit on the other guy, demean them as much as possible, and then when it's all over, look at how awesome. And I got to tell you, we had a president that's no longer there that was him for a while, and I get in arguments with people, but when narcissism becomes a problem, and I don't know, I hope I don't anger you guys off of that, but I that's really hard for me to deal with people that are they'll look at me because that's just not at all how I was raised. You like it, you like the attention, but you want other people to talk about you. You don't necessarily want to have to talk about yourself. I think there's insecurities when it comes to that. If am I getting off subject at all? Hopefully not.
No, no, it's great. I want to talk with you now about the vegan, being a vegan, being plant-based. You watched the documentary that changed your life about animals and the cruelty to animals.
Yeah.
And you've been plant-based before. It's become a little more cool. It's become a little more fashionable. There's a safer space for vegans and plant-based. You were doing it, and you were plant-based at a time when it was considered almost insanity for an athlete. Like, you and Mac Danzig, it's like, wait, you're going to eat plant-based, you're going to get destroyed in an octagon, this sport of alphas. Talk about that mind shift of how you went from being carnivore to plant-based and vegan, and why that's important for you and your wife.
Well, yeah. I've always been like I felt like a weird spirit with animals, like a kid, with my dogs or whatever. Cats. I just felt that way, and I didn't grow up on a farm or anything. So I didn't understand like what I was eating at the time. I think I known, and that there's healthier ways to eat that didn't have to involve, slaughtering an animal. I would have done it at an early age, like my kids are now, because we explained to them what happens to animals, the fear that they go through when they die, when they're the inhumane ways they're raised. And like you said, I was in one of the most alpha type sports and MMA and masculine sports and fighting, and so I got a lot of crap for it. I'm around these guys. Oh yeah, where do you get your protein? Blah blah blah. And so I've had to, and I can be confrontational. Like I don't have an issue with it. Speaking up or speaking out. I always feel like I'm talking on behalf of the of the person being bullied or the animal being bullied or whatever. Like I hate bullies. I hate that someone feels like they're better than somebody else because they have this position of power, whereas like an animal has no position of power and a human does. And so like I'm going to stick up for the animal. If you're downtrodden, or you don't have you come from, you're poor or whatever, like I want to stick up for the person who doesn't have what others have, I guess. And that's just who I am. So when it comes to animals, it's a no-brainer. It's been going on 11 years that I've not eaten meat, and feel no need for it, and will never. Like it's not like, oh, people go like, you miss what chicken wings tasted like, and I'm like, nah, not really. there are other versions. I can put hot sauce on other things that have that same feeling, and I feel better about myself and what I'm doing. And it was never a health thing for me either. It was strictly like what I felt for animals. I know that's probably crazy to some people, but like I don't believe that killing something is right. I don't know any way you can justify that unless it's strictly out of survival. And people say like, well, what if you had to eat an animal to survive? Well, yeah, I don't live in that world though. Like I can drive right down to Sprouts a mile away, or I can walk or whatever. I've got a Safeway around the corner, and I can buy plants and things that are going to, keep me alive and keep me healthy. So I don't live in that world where I have to go kill an animal. Because I would do it if I had to survive. But that's just not this world.
What is the last piece of meat you remember eating? Tell us about the last time you remember eating meat. Do you remember what it was and
Yeah.
when you ate it?
We were in Australia, going down to corner Ryan Bader. He was fighting. Yeah, a guy hit him with a flying knee and then dropped him. It was 11 years ago. 11 years ago, next month, I think. And it was and chicken was the last thing to go for me. It was like a chicken breast in Australia, and I got done reading that book, Eating Animals, and it was like tough. And so, and I laughed because like I was with Randall Alleman and Dave Martin down there. We went down there to be with Bader during his fight and then corner him. And I gave it up then. I was sitting there eating and I peeled this chicken breast apart and I saw like the shreds of the meat pull from it. And I just like, I can't do it. I'm done. And I ate margarita pizzas the entire time I was down there, the week that I was down in Australia. And they'd always laugh and be like, oh, get a margarita pizza for this guy. It was just cheese pizza, And so I ate like probably 50 of those in the week that I was down there. And then I had to come back and really learn like what do I need to do to make up certain things that I'm lacking. And that was it. So it was chicken. Chicken was the last thing to go for sure.
What do you want? I mean, you're still very young. You don't look 46. You look younger than it. What is a good legacy for you? I mean, you've done a lot of things. What would you want to be known for? Let's even say you live another 40, 50 years. What is it that you'd like to be known for mainly?
That I was honest, that I was a good friend to people, and that I stuck up for I knew right over wrong, I guess, and I stuck up for the person or animal or whatever that needed to be stuck up for. Like I think that's the biggest thing. I guess being truthful to who I am and living by a code in a way. And I try to a lot, and sometimes you stray away from that code. But I got to know Pat Tillman back in the day a little bit. More so after he died, you start really learning about Pat. But like Pat and I would talk in the weight room at ASU, and Pat lost his life for the country and for what we were going through. At least he thought he did at the time. We find out some other things that happened to Pat over there, and things that he was finding out on his own while he was over there. But Pat's one of those guys that we all look up to as Sun Devils, and it really as a country, everyone should find out who Pat Tillman is and think about what that guy stood for. And I think like living up to someone like that, and I think of his teammates and guys that I know, like Keith Poole, who was a wide receiver, and Jake Plummer, some of these guys, like they all try to live up to what Pat stood for, because Pat was like an honest, good, decent human being that fought for right over wrong. And that's, kind of what I want to be, and what I would want my legacy or memory to be, that I was, a good person that stood up for, right over wrong.
What is the have you ever met Michael Phelps? I believe lives there in Arizona, him and his wife and his family. Have you ever met him down there?
Never have. He coached at ASU after I left. I think he coached a year at ASU. I think he lives in Scottsdale, but he may have moved. Like, I'm not sure if he lives in Arizona anymore.
Okay.
So no, I've never met him.
What's a story or stories in in wrestling or from your MMA career that you're proud of? A story that kind of illustrates who you are, or it could be funny. What's a story that stands out that's like, this is one of the things that just stands out in all the time I've been on the mat or in a cage? What stories stand out?
God, I don't know. You put me on the spot here with this, and that's
Well, what's the most adversity? Give me a story about adversity. What's the most adversity you faced in your MMA career? What was the most adverse moment, and what did you do? How did you get through that?
You know, I fought Tom Lawler in my third fight, and I didn't know what the hell I was doing fighting it, you know, at all. I don't think I knew what I was doing until I was done fighting. And then I was trained with the guys kind of sparring, and now I'm older. I'm out of it, and now I'm like, oh man, this is what I should have done. Like you kind of learn things later. I didn't. I got like Ryan Bader now is it the best he's ever been? It took him a long time. You know, even when I was fighting and Ryan was fighting, he wasn't that good of a fighter. He was a stud. He was a badass, but he still had some things to learn mentally, mechanically, technically, like things that he's now doing, and he's so confident in how he is that like to me he's like one of the best fighters in the world right now. But it took a long time. Whereas some guys, man, they get it quickly. You know, they're the best. They're the best in the world, and they believe it, and they're so. But when I fought Tom Lawler, I think that, you know, he beat me up pretty good in the first round, and like my head was snapping back, and I had to I kind of had to nut up and really take care of business, and that was it was a war, you know. Could have gone either way. Like I got my hand raised, but you know, he could have got his hand raised, and I'd have been, you know, as equally fine with it. Like it was just a battle. If you ever could go back and watch that fight, like we fought, and I had to really step up, and I beat him in the wrestling, which I knew I could. He outstruck me in the first round pretty good. That was like my back was against the wall type fight. I had one with Mark Munoz that he ended up winning, but I out wrestled him in the fight. He outstruck me. So those are all kind of big deals. I've had a lot of adversity with injuries and stuff, and having wanted to step up and fight just to provide for my family at times. When I probably shouldn't have stepped in the cage, you know, it was maybe too soon after an injury or something, but it is what it is. Like I just chalk everything up to learning experiences and things that I got to do. And I can hopefully continue to do stuff like, you know, just out of knowing what I know. Like I got to travel with Demi Lovato and train her on the road on a tour a couple years ago because of Jay Glazer. Jay called me up, so I went on tour with her for like 3 weeks on her bus and trained her at the hotels. And then they called me up and asked to go to Bali because she wanted to go down there and work on an album. So I flew to Bali for 11 days and got to enjoy the island there just because of, you know, being good to people, I think, and training hard and whatever. Like I got that in my life. Like I've gotten to do a lot of cool things just because I said yes to a lot of things. And I
think she trains jiu-jitsu, right? She trains jiu-jitsu,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, jiu-jitsu and MMA and everything. Like Glazer was a big part of that. He trained her at his gym, Unbreakable, there in Hollywood. Yeah, all that.
Did she pick your brain about the plant-based stuff? Does she eat a lot of that too? I mean, a lot of the Hollywood crowd eats that. Was she picking your brain about that?
No, she didn't. She brought it up, you know, and I said, yeah, I don't eat meat. She goes, oh, you know, I tried that one time. And she's like, she's a young kid to me. Like it's funny how immature and like, you know, she was probably 25 at the time, and I had a 25-year-old daughter at the time. Like my daughter that we adopted when she was 12, loved Demi Lovato. So when I texted Claire, I'd be like, yeah, I'm gonna go train Demi Lovato. She was like blown away by it, and loved her. And you know, Demi had a lot of issues. My daughter, that she was we adopted her, but before we adopted her, she had a lot of issues and things that happened to her in her life. That now she's 27 years old and is really turned the corner and back in college and figured her life out. And I looked in Demi, I'm like, man, you've got some issues and things you got to deal with. And she OD'd, you know. Demi had issues after I trained her. She's still trying to figure her life out. So it was more than just being plant-based, you know. She's got a whole thing she's got to figure out.
Yeah, it's probably very tough in having all of that there's a lot that comes with the lifestyle of rich and famous. There's a lot of
Yeah.
pressure.
Yeah.
Do you the medals you've got probably a crazy amount of medals and honors and awards. Where do you keep them, and are they in a prominent place? Do you look at them? Are they tucked away? I'm always interested to see where other athletes put all the medals and awards, and how, are they prominently displayed? Are they Matt Hughes had like some of his UFC belts were under his bed, some were loaned out to friends, like one he didn't know where it was. Like, what's your relationship like with those medals and those trophies, and you put them out, or you just kind of tuck them away somewhere?
Yeah, no, they're we have a basement here, and so they're down in one room in the basement, just like kind of all stacked up together, laying against the wall. And I'm like, I should probably put those up somewhere, like put them out in the office. And but I don't know, I some kind of feel like it's weird. Like, yeah, I did it, and it's really cool, but like, I don't know, like like you want your kids to be proud of you. I'm like, oh, look, I did this, but I really want them to have a place I'm going to put their stuff up, and so I don't know that I like, I have a couple of awards that I like, my All-American plaques at ASU. I was an outstanding wrestler at this national duels. It was kind of a cool award, but they're just kind of sitting down, like up against the wall on the floor in one of the rooms in the basement. And I don't know, maybe I should put them up. Like, I have my master's degree and my undergrad degree, like that's up on the wall in my office. And that's really it. Yeah, medals, those are all in a box somewhere, I think at my mom's house, my parents' house.
Yeah, Noah, you've been listening. We're winding down now. What do you have for my man Aaron Simpson? While you got him, what's on your mind, buddy?
Just one thing, Aaron, where you are today, where you're standing at today, how do you do your own goal setting for your life?
Ooh, good question. Man, that's been tough. Like,
Mm-hmm.
everything changes, and now that I don't necessarily have like a final goal, like, like, I've always had something to train for. You always have like that next
Yeah.
date, that next date. So I haven't had that the last several years. Now it's kind of like, I've just got to get clients that want to buy homes or sell their homes. So I'm kind of working towards that, but I don't put a financial goal out there like some people do. Like, I want to make $500,000 next year. I'm going to sell this many homes. Like, I just kind of, I approach it, and I've been somewhat fortunate that I haven't had to market myself. I don't get on Instagram, talk about that I'm a realtor, and I probably should do that. I'd probably be making a lot more money, and maybe someday I will, but I just haven't had to do that. So I don't know. Like, for me, it's more about my kids and little goals, like parenting goals, and approaching things differently, and learning, more about reacting this way as opposed to that way. And when my son does this or my daughter does this, and how do we discipline them this or that way? It's weird how things shift for you, when it's not about you anymore. Like, it's always about me for 38, 39 years, and now that it's not about me, I just have to kind of adjust my goals towards my family and my kids.
But there's also a place for you to
Is
show,
there?
yes, to show them that, yeah, there has to be, because in order for them to understand, in the Marine Corps we learn lead by example. So I
Yeah.
would I would my my takeaway would be, you know, how you set your goals to, whatever those particulars are, to demonstrate goal setting and achievement and sacrifice.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, it's about being a good role model for my kids more than anything, and having something for them to look up to. So, like, just with the way we eat, and the health, and
Mm-hmm.
how we talk, and like what we are okay with our kids, the way they talk. Like, we're not so hard on, like, if like I cuss, and like I don't freak out all the time, and my kids aren't out there cussing or anything, at least not around us. um and so, like, we live our lives with a certain amount of leniency, I guess, but also discipline too. Like, my wife's, she runs all the time, she works out her time, she does like yoga challenges and meditation challenges. um I'm still training. You know, I'll still work out and I'll still go to the gym, and sometimes I'll bring my kids with me. Or I think it's more just how they see me live my life and the disciplines that I have that are like, just like, not necessarily that I've written down or whatever, but just, you know, lifestyle things that they know how I react to life. Like they'll see me out in my garage working out or hitting the bag, and my daughter will come out and laugh at me hitting a heavy bag because it probably does look goofy or whatever, or working out or lifting. But they work out too. Like my kids they'd rather play and train. Like my daughter goes to a conditioning class for soccer, and when it's done, she wants to play more. She wants to grab a football and throw passes, and that's just how my kids are. Like they're constant energy, because I think that's who my wife and I are.
One more quick question. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
One more quick question.
I'm down to 5% battery on my phone.
Oh, okay. This will be very quick. What are your thoughts of Lance Armstrong? Have you ever met him, and what do you think about his legacy? Just this is out of left field, but you know, you brought up a few names. I'm just curious.
Yeah, Lance Armstrong. Never met him.
Okay, that's what I want to know. Yeah.
I don't. The only thing I know about Lance is that he did what everyone else, I believe, was doing at the time to be the best in the world, and I think he was just better at it than anybody else. I don't know that obviously it was illegal and not the right thing to do. But from what I understand in the cycling world, like he was the only one doping.
Yeah.
If 20 guys are all doping and they're all doing it, and then you're just the best one at doping, like, I don't know, like you're all equal in that regard, but then you're a better cyclist at it. I don't know. I don't know how to think about it. I think he's really tarnished for that. Like, I think like the baseball players, Barry Bonds and those guys, obviously tarnished it, but all the dudes were doing it in baseball. Those guys were all doping. They were all jacked. I mean, look, some of the pictures of those guys are insane. But when it comes down to money and providing, and like, I don't know, it's hard to really judge someone like that. And you look at like like the Russians, man, my phone has 2%.
Okay. Well, thank you for that, Frank.
1%.
Yeah, Aaron, thank you so much. Next time we have you on, we'll have you on again. I want to pick your brain about who you love to watch out there, fighters. But so grateful to have you, Aaron. We will love to have you on again, and I hope you have a great rest of the night, my friend.
Yeah, guys, thank you. I really enjoyed it, and I'm stepping here. I'm going to charge my phone, but yeah, anytime. You got my number, so I enjoyed this. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much.
Good luck. All right, we'll talk to you soon, Aaron. Thank you so much. Happy New Year.
You too. Happy New Year. We'll see you. Bye-bye.
Bye, bud. Bye, Noah.
Bye.